everyone. It's Monday, March 28th, and we're here with another episode of our irregular series, Nonprofit Executive Spotlight, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp, and today I'm here with our guest, Jennifer Poff, who is seeking her next leadership position at an association. Welcome, Jennifer. Would you like to say hello and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you for having me today, the opportunity to share a little bit about my leadership and the things that I'm passionate about with potential associations who are looking for their next leader.
Oh, and one of the things I want to dive right in this conversation, Jennifer, because as we were prepping for this episode, we talked a lot about technology and how leaders really need to have a handle on that important tool that's really the infrastructure in today's world for most associations. So what is your viewpoint of technology and how any size association can leverage that?
Yes, so I am an absolute believer that all associations need to somewhat have the latest and greatest in technology in order to operate, especially in the last 2 years where we've seen a lot of organizations go remote, have to serve their members more through webinars, having to be able to manage projects internally across the board when you're not all in the office together. And I think this was a huge step that a lot of associations had to take at the start of the pandemic is if we haven't updated our technology, we need to make sure that we have it updated now in order to be able to continue business. And I know for large organizations, it always seems easier to be able to update that technology than it is for smaller organizations. But smaller organizations can do that too. In my last organization, we were a team of 7, and that technology was a huge piece that we needed ahead of the pandemic because we live in a disaster zone. So there was times that we could not get into the office due to hurricanes, floods, and we needed to be able to work remotely as well as in a physical office space and make sure our operations could continue. So we had to figure out how do we make this huge technology upgrade and how can we afford it as a small organization. So we did that through leveraging sponsorships with various technology vendors, and we made sure that we negotiated costs. Everything's negotiable in life. And so we wanted to make sure that we could get the latest and greatest to help us move our organization forward.
That is such a great point, Jennifer, that everything is negotiable and you don't get if you don't ask. And I think a lot of us forget that. The worst thing that's going to happen is they'll say no. So I really am glad you brought that up because leaders, that's a leadership mindset. Leaders know that they can negotiate, they can ask questions. So how well do you think smaller associations are leveraging their technology?
I think smaller organizations have definitely had a harder time. And part of that has been due to the concern of budgets, especially if they're a member-driven organization. The board may be concerned about the resources dedicated to that area. And so I think the pandemic, there's been some struggle more for them to catch up than the larger organizations. And you've got to really have those one-on-one relationships throughout your leadership experience to talk to the board, to have those conversations and make sure that you're expressing why you need it, whether it's for more efficient operations, to better serve the members, give them ease of access to the organization. And small organizations can do that sometimes if they have a larger organization above them through collaborating with their state organization or their national organization. And how do you use those relationships to maybe combine technologies to support that membership? And I think we get so caught up in sometimes we're an independent operation and we need to be able to do that ourselves. But in today's world, the collaboration, going back to negotiation in some aspects, we have to do it. And I think small organizations are still somewhat behind and need to catch up.
And I know that's very difficult for some smaller staffs because they're very stretched already. And trying to take the time to learn how to better use your system can be difficult. So do you have any tips on that? I don't want us to completely focus on technology because there's more to leadership than that. But just to close this part of our conversation, what tips do you have for that smaller staff that needs to better leverage their technology?
I think you can't really put it all on one staff. There's an opportunity to delegate out among other people who may have expertise on the staff, or maybe your more tech savvy staff members. If you don't have a lot of tech savvy staff members, then there's opportunities sometimes to work with individual consultants to help implement some of those systems. And you've really got to have a leader who can help drive the technology piece forward. And so I know for me, there was a lot of implementation on my end in my last organization on the technology pieces, but I also had a consultant who was coming in and help pushing those items forward and help deciding the order of how we were going to implement those. And then we had to train our staff on how to use those and bring in other teams of how do you use this new database? What is out there on YouTube or various learning pieces to learn how to work the project management system? And how do we make shifts quickly going forward and keep you updated? So it's really, don't put everything on one if you can help it. Have a team of 2 or 3 people who can help do this and manage a time frame and plan the time frame for implementation and try to spread it out as much as possible, but knowing it needs to be quickly done because change and disruptions coming quickly. And if your software is behind, it may be hard to make those shifts within the organization.
That's great advice, because what I hear you saying is you need to set aside that time for the staff to learn things. And I know sometimes in the crush of daily events, we forget that. So I think that's great advice. And it's a great segue into the next part of our conversation and working with the staff. So as a leader, you need to set a tone, you need to lead people forward, you need to create that safe space for people to do what they need to do with confidence. So what are some approaches you take in working with staff, and how do you keep them motivated?
Yes, so the biggest thing is collaboration. There are still small staff associations that are somewhat siloed. People go in and they work on their individual projects, and you have to break down those walls because everybody really needs to know what everybody's doing, understand where everybody's strengths and weaknesses are, and leverage the strength to be able to succeed as an organization. I used to like to tell my team, we all succeed together and we all can fail together, but we're a team. And it's very important that we make sure we're working as a team and communicate openly with everybody. And sometimes those office doors can be closed. And I always said, let's leave the office doors open. Let's talk about everything, even if it's something as simple as what's going on in your personal life that may be impacting your feelings when you come in here, to I have this huge project and I'm just overwhelmed right now and I don't know how to work through it. How can you help? And I think while leaders are often told not to be doers, in small associations, there has to be some doing from the leader. And there has to be the ability as that leader to step in and say, let me help you with that. There's no reason to be overwhelmed. I can take a couple of hours and help you get those social media posts up. I can take a couple of hours and help you work through the venue selection for an event. In small staff teams, it's everybody has to be on board, and the leader has to be the person who pushes that forward. And then in turn, supporting their team as they're working through projects with members and what that feedback from the members may be.
Right. And, and I like that you brought that up, because we're all still humans. We're people. A lot of different things influence our mindset when we come to the office every day. So I really like that you keep that in mind. We have to be sensitive to each other, especially in times where things seem like the world might be going in the wrong direction, like it might feel like lately. So I think that's really great advice for anyone who is currently a leader or wants to become a leader. So working with the staff is a big part of the job of a leader at an association, and so is working with the board of directors. Those are the 2 big constituencies that you deal with on a daily basis. And then our third constituency, of course, is our members, who are always top of mind. But let's segue from staff to board relationships. How do you build that relationship with a board of directors as a leader, no matter what size the association is? What is your approach?
So board relationships can be tricky sometimes. And I think the best way to approach them, especially when you're a new leader, and sometimes a new leader following a long-term leader, is build those one-on-one relationships and get to know them personally. What are their likes, dislikes, and so forth, as well as professionally. What do you do? What skill sets do you have? How have you impacted the profession? And how do we leverage that within the organization? Because at the end of the day, after you have those one-on-one relationships, you all have to come together for a vision. And how are we going to drive the organization forward? And that vision has to be a combined effort between what does the executive's vision look like for this organization and what is the board's vision? And where do we need to compromise so we can come together for the betterment of the organization and making sure that we're relevant for years to come and that we're going to succeed in serving the profession and helping the members succeed in their professional roles.
Well, and I think that is a great way to explain it. How do you build those relationships, especially since with the board, they're going to change every couple of years. And so you're always going to have a new mix of people. And also that compromise. And I think we should explore that for a minute or two, because of course the board sets direction and the chief staff executive implements that direction. But sometimes the board doesn't realize all the time how long things take or what the actual situation is, because it's not their full-time job like a chief staff executive. So how do you approach that when you're explaining to the board, well, we can't get there from here, but if we go around the other way, we can accomplish this thing. So how do you deal with that?
So I think there's a couple pieces there to help get the board to move forward with an idea. And some of that is, what data do you have to support this decision or this idea? And going through the database and looking at it. And then sometimes doing additional market research through surveys, through focus groups to understand why we need to do this. Where is the feedback coming from? And then also talking to the exec to understand what the best practices is, because a lot of times our members of the American Society of Association Executives or State Society of Association Executives or other little groups that we can get feedback from. And we can get these ideas and best practices from what other associations have done to succeed with this particular idea. And to present all of that to the board to say, here's why we're driving this forward. Here is information, instead of it sounding like I'm just throwing an idea out there for everybody to just talk about. Mm-hmm. That way there's evidence to support it. And hopefully that helps make the decision easier for the board.
And I agree with that approach. I think that's very well said. Coming in with an explanation and the data is always going to help move forward. Because boards want to do their best. You have to make sure they have what they need to do their best. So as we're getting to the point where we need to start wrapping up our episode, Jennifer, it's been great talking with you, especially your views on technology in our world today, since we have moved so much to a virtual world. What sort of a association would you like to work for? So meaning, do you want a professional society, a trade association? What is it you're hoping to find?
I am looking for a chief staff executive or senior level role within an organization that supports collaboration among their volunteer leaders and staff, as well as the opportunity to potentially transform the organization throughout the next decade of challenges that may be coming ahead of us by using foresight, vision, strategy, all those great resources that I can share with an organization as a leader to help make sure that we continue to serve our members in the best capacity possible.
That's great. And I don't think any organization can ask anything else from their leader, current or future. So Jennifer, this has been a really interesting conversation. So thanks for joining us here at Nonprofit Executive Spotlight. If somebody wanted to follow up with you about any of your comments, or they want to add you to their team, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me at jennifer.a@gmail.com,
There you have it. Thanks, Jennifer. So talk to Jennifer before someone else scoops her up. She will be a great leader for any organization. So that's it for this episode of Nonprofit Executive Spotlight. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again with another episode unless everyone gets a job. Thanks, everybody.